Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is April 12th, the year 2022, 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I hope you're doing all marvelously well. I see the usual suspects are here in the live chat room, and you will be amply rewarded today, I guarantee you, because we have the return visit of Mr. James W. Lee. He also goes by Jamie. He's got a brand new book out, and he's previewing it for you. I hope you will uh, purchase this book. I've always envied the production values of his work. He's got incredible graphics, quality, paper, binding. Perhaps he can address that issue as a self-publisher myself. I'm interested in that. But really, we're going to talk about Queen Califia here in his new discoveries that are building upon his previous books. I'm going to bring him in about 15 seconds, but I just have to share with you here in the live chat a scoop because earlier today I talked to none other than Dr. Leonard Horowitz. I finally managed to get, you know who he is, Jamie? I'm sure
Absolutely.
everybody does. And he's going to be on the show. I gave him a pitch while he was rolling down the highway down in Florida. So that's going to be interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, let me bring on Mr. Jamie Lee. Please give him a round of applause. Here we go. Sir, good to see you again. How have you been since we last spoke?
Busier than a one-armed paper hanger, as we used to say.
With
Yeah, just doing the trying to get the information out and trying to adapt and adjust to what's going on in this crazy world we're doing, and it's just and also finding the balance, between living in this world and being a part of it, but then again knowing we're spiritual beings and having a physical experience and trying to understand a much bigger agenda going on here. And I can't share a screen, so people, I'm going to call you Doctor Hamamoto is going to be sharing the story with you. But I just want to read.
yeah, we're going to go into this. We do some graphics, but go ahead, continue.
Well, I just want to say that people that are into astrology, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do, and they do because it works. But this today, April 12th, 2022, is a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. First time it's happened in 166 years. So it's a really very big event. And what it rules in is the second ray of love and wisdom that unites with Neptune, who's the sixth ray of devotion and idealism, and both in Pisces, which is transcendence. So it's opening, as the dark forces are getting stronger and stronger, it's opening portals for us in our conscious development in order to be able to to navigate in this crazy world and to be able to make the right decisions that we need to in order to, figure stuff out, and still be able to read the dark news every day and be able to find our happy place and still come out with love in our heart. And as a lot of people fall away that we used to think were our friends or families or whatever, we still have to keep an open heart. And it's always our job, if we understand someone better than they understand themselves, it's for us to adjust. It's not for them to change so we feel better. So it's always about how you put it out there is what to me is of critical importance. And this is the book I wrote previous to I've written a 3 now in California, the history of California. This one's the history of Marin County, where I grew up. And I don't know if you've ever done a history of where you grew up, but with all the Tartarians and all the revisionist history, to go into your county, I learned so much about Marin County, which is right across the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco Bay. It was a major resource extraction center. They had dozens of trains in the 1820s and 30s. They had a 100-room hotel in California that they had in 1888, where the rich were coming over. I'm a former tennis player, and they had the National Lawn Tennis Association Lawn Tennis National Championships for the women in 1891 in San Rafael, California. What? How did they get to California? And Marin, it's like San Francisco. It's basically an island on 3 sides. And so they had to sail over. They had to come over. They had to get there. So this started my journey with California. You have a question?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of odd that you would be bringing. I mean, I know you live in Marin and you have a background there, and you wrote that great book, which I have on Marin County. But just yesterday or a couple of days ago, I watched this documentary on the late Robin Williams. It's called Robin Wishes. And as you know, he was from Marin County. His father was a high-level Ford executive, and which is quite telling so far as that's concerned. But then he came back, and then when he died, which was back in 2014, supposedly by his own hand, I guess that's the official story. He was living in Tiburon.
Yep.
Am I pronouncing it correctly, Mr.
Yeah,
Lee?
Tiburon, Tiburon means shark. Yeah, he was living in Tiburon, and that's his home. He went to Redwood High School. I met him a few times. Kind of a nervous, nice guy, and kind of thing like that. But so anyway, go on. You were going to say?
So yeah. So what's your take on the circumstances of his death? I might give a talk on it on Thursday. I might do something on.
You want to get into it right away, huh?
Yeah,
Robin,
you live there and you ran into him, and he was part of that. He
was suicided.
He was very accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, he was suicided. I mean, obviously, they had a Family Guy episode the day before, and the Family Guy episode the day before shows him being hung on a door, hanging himself on a door because he had not Parkinson's. I forget what the disease they had labeled him, just like they labeled, the next guy. Hollywood are actors. The whole thing with the slap on, but they're all actors in that room, folks. They're acting. Stop talking about them. They're just playing a role. And then when they're done with them, they just like musicians, they just get rid of them. That's why Don Henley died at 67. Tom Petty dies at 67. This is what they do, and then they advertise it. So Robin Williams was found suicided on his door, hanging from a doorknob. And if you think of, and they have a bunch of different people dying the same exact way. He lived out his useful life, and I encourage everybody. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not going to get into it today, but I hope you all download this movie called Final Cut, because it's very important to understand what the technology is available today. And Robin Williams starred in this movie Final Cut, and he's a cutter. And that's because we all have chips in us, and they can record our MP4 and MP3s, and they record it, and then they can cut out parts of you. We know about false memory syndrome. Right? We know about how they're changing the memories. We know about how this technology is very advanced and they can erase your memories. And they're doing that with Google, with the Mandela effect, which we'll get into another time and all that. So this is all about memories and being erased. And this is why I'm writing physical books. You were going to say?
No, I mean, gosh, how providential that we're talking like this. I mean, I didn't really expect this. I thought we were going to, and we will get into Queen Califas, but it's all very much related because I think he's on hallowed burial ground for the native people up there in, Mount Tamalpais, the sacred area and all that. Yeah, I think you've convinced me. I'm going to go ahead and start putting out some conjectures on Thursday, sooner than later. But you mentioned the MO is very similar to other celebrities who've aged out or timed out their usefulness. One of them is Anthony Bourdain, who died under similar MO, right? And he, as I found out in my own investigation, was the son of someone who was part of the French equivalent to MI6 or CIA called a Sûreté. And he was part of this larger global opium trade, this traffic, which finances the real government. And of course, his mother was a publisher, and they slotted him into this guy who was the traveling gourmet. So what you're telling us, Mr. Lee, is very much validated and confirmed by recent history. So I'm glad that it's just so providential. You're right on site there. You're in Marin County. And you have the perfect point of observation, and you have, as a result, the credibility, the veritas, the gravitas to be able to address this issue, especially since you've already established in your previous work, and I was already convinced that you're correct, that most of the historiography, the academic history that's been written, not just about Marin County or California, Califas, let's put it charitably, is only partially correct. So with that, let's get into your recent Queen Califas.
Well, and also that's the very key to it all. And the Berkeley Bancroft Library is the font of all knowledge for California history, and then the backup is the Stanford University, Steelen Leland Stanford. Once I got into my California, that's what he used to be named, because he stole all the railroad money, because the railroads were already there, and we'll get into that. But that's who controls the history, the narrative. Who's behind it. And when I get into the California book, I get into the whole fraud that was committed with the brass plate from Sir Francis Drake, who was a slave trader who landed in California and Marin, the first lands. And that's when the white guys first got into the brownskins and started taking over their lands. And it turns out that brass plate is a total forgery, but they still keep it in the Bancroft Library and whatnot, And
isn't it UC Berkeley, right?
Berkeley. At UC Berkeley. And Bancroft donated 80,000 books, and he was a pauper, and he brought these books over all the way on a ship. And, the story is just ridiculous.
Now, Mr. Lee, I know this is off topic, but I see in the chat room here we have an individual by the name of Giuliano Bridel. He says hello from Amsterdam. So I wonder if you've given some thought to the Dutch East India connection to the historiography that's been suppressed. I mean, they settled New York, New Amsterdam, New Jersey. The whole Hudson Valley is Dutch East India. And in my people's part of the world, the Dutch East India Company tried to conquer Japan. They succeeded in China and the Philippines, along with the Jesuits, the Franciscans, and later the Freemasons, Commodore Perry. So let's have some love for Mr. Bridel from Amsterdam. Maybe he knows about this. So
that's a great dovetail into the Califia book, is that the West Indies, what did Columbus think? Where was he sailing? He was sailing to the West Indies. And then he named everybody Indians. And then the Spanish took over the brownskins and said, you speak Spanish now. And then they gave him the term Latin Americans. They totally changed the entire culture of the entire North Americans and South Americans when the white man came in and took over and changed everything about their history. And that comes into Queen Califia, because what was there before the white man came? So Columbus was sailing, and this gets into flat earth, which we won't get into, but this sails straight to the West Indies makes it perfectly right that Columbus was sailing to the west, and he did land in the West Indies, which is the Haiti area and that area. So that makes total sense. And then when he came onto the land, cue up the book, please, we started learning about that he landed in Paradisimo Tercio Paradisimo. And you can start scrolling down, and I'm gonna dovetail you. I'm gonna have to flip back and forth, or maybe you can follow me as I scroll down here, Daryl, on the book here.
Oh, is this right?
Yeah, but I'm reading from my text, which you can't see. So I'm just going to scroll down. But let's just scroll down the book, and I'll get past the dedication and the title page. And so when Columbus landed, he had never seen land like this before, and it was a land of fecundity. And I'm sorry I can't bring up the chart, but there was 200-pound gold nuggets in the ground. There was copper mines and trees in California that were 3,000 years old that had never been touched. Why? If the white man was pillaging the world and getting all its resources, why did it take till the 1840s and 50s to get to the lands? Because it was an island, which we'll get into. So the Amazonian queen of Califia, Columbus comes here and lands in paradise. And it's all based allegedly on this book, Lycurgus de Esplanadian. And that was a book written in the 1600s. And that's what they said they used. And it was all written about a novel. And it was the fifth book in the novel. And again, my question is, what was America before it was Central, South, and North America? And then the Moorish Islamic origins. It used to go west to east. All the knowledge now is east to west. And they talk about the magnetic flipping of the poles. They're talking about flipping of the compass from west to east. And so that's why we have so many areas in here. The original Jerusalem was Mexico City. And that's what Columbus landed in Mexico City, and that's where he took over, and they started their pilgrimage. Yes, exactly. The Griffins, the Tartarians, somebody mentioned in the chat room. The allegories, the Wizard of Oz. Let's get into that because that's fascinating. So let's just scroll down, Daryl. I'm just scrolling through the chapters here.
1 second. This harkens back to your brilliant book on the California fires, because you were talking about the gold.
Yeah.
Do you remember there was a story about that someone said that there was a bunch of gold in some of these towns that got burnt out? And that was one of the reasons that they lit it on fire. Could you expand on that?
I wish I could show my screen because I had this all set up for you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is,
no. It's just the way it is. It's our world today.
yeah. We had
Yeah.
some problems, ladies and gentlemen.
So I went up to Paradise 20 times. I interviewed 50, 60, 70 people. The story about but Paradise Lost is the story from John Milton, I think it is. Paradise Lost, written in the 1640s, 50s. And it's about the fall from heaven of the fallen angels, the fight in hell with heaven. Lucifer and Michael fight. 1847 is when Lucifer falls down to earth. Better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. And that's what's going on today. But up in paradise is where we find the riches. You know, there's so much gold, there's so much silver. Do you know where the first diamond mines were ever found, Daryl? In California? No, in Paradise.
Oh, Paradise, California.
In Magalia. And as soon as it was the largest largest diamond mines, and immediately was bought up by the De Beers Company.
So it's not the Congo. It's Paradise, California.
Well, De Beers makes all the fake diamonds. They take all the real diamonds.
Fake. They're
yeah,
fake.
oh, they're all fake. Yeah. All the diamonds. Sorry, ladies, but all the diamonds. I did a whole video on that. It's fascinating. It's when they went down. De Beers went down to South Africa and got control of the diamond mines. Mm-hmm. It's also down in Almaden. Silicon Valley was founded because of the red mercury mines. And what we're learning is red mercury, that little red mercury, used to go create all the free energy that all the domes are run on around the world. They all had free energy with the water and the star forts and everything else. I'm covering a lot of ground here, but giving you a background that California was the paradise. And as we'll get into, that this land was fecundant. The flora and fauna, they lived with nature. The bears, the elk, the geese, everything was fecundant because the queen was ruling over it. And as you see in the picture of the Amazonian queen, you can just start, we can start here and I'll just follow you. Now just go back to the one page. Yeah.
Oh, here. Okay. Yeah.
Well, show that first, because these are all the images of Queen Califia. All right. And this is where the name from that book Esplanandia comes from, is where the name originally, they said originated, was Queen Califia, came from this book Esplanandia, when in fact that's not true. But they have all these images of her, and they're actually resurrecting her now. So go to the next page. Other way.
Forward.
There you go. One back. And one more back, I think. I don't know if you can do a split page or not. You go the other way. You're going forward.
I'm going forward into the book. This is in the Giants area.
Yeah, go the other way. Go back to the beginning where you were.
Oh, to the beginning, yeah. Yeah, this is my edit, ladies and gentlemen, because we weren't able to upload the.
All right, so it was not until the 25 years after the book was written that a Spanish navigator, Cortez, and his fellow conquistadors landed upon the peninsula, which they thought was an island. So here we have Cortez saying he thought it was an island. And I'm going to read from the back cover of my book. Because this explains pretty much all of it, why it was named, why it was not an island anymore. It was not until Father Eusebio Kino, a Jesuit, crossed the Baja California Peninsula, submitted a report with the occupying map in 1705, that the idea of island California was called into question. Kino's map included this influential report from the 1705 Lettres Infidates et Curieuses, published in Paris. Kino's map was rich with new information about the Mer de la California. His view was not immediately accepted. So originally he was saying it was an island. It was only until 1746 when another Jesuit, Fernando Consac, sailed completely around the Gulf of California that it was accepted that California was indeed not an island, and it was decreed that is that by King Ferdinand VI of Spain in 1747. So that's the entire premise for California being told it was not an island. Was a Jesuit, a Spanish conquering king said it wasn't so. So that to me was like gold. All right, so let's go ahead and scroll down, and you can read about the passages there as I'm going through. And again, this is something about the Muslims founding America. This is the president of Turkey speaking about that. I'm just going to go through kind of headlines on this. And
yeah, now this was to me a revelation. I had not heard of this the Muslim connection to California. Or America,
the brownskins. And so we call people black. I'm sorry, I've never met charcoal black. I've never met black. I have a son that's brown skin, adopted, but there's no such thing as black. And they got everybody saying African American, Asian American, Mexican American, but they never say European American. Why? Because where the Europeans came over here, the white people, and took over the brown skins. And then they named them Indians, they named them Mexicans, they gave them all these different names to hide the native true bloods of the brown skinned people. And so I use the term brown skin. Also the Moors, also the Tartarians. There's many different names, but the Moorish legends, that's why you see all the domes. You know, what are all the dome structures of the state capitals? Those are all Muslim domes, Muslim created domes. So it really makes sense when you start to think about it. And then we had the Continental Great Divide, which we'll get into. And watch my time here, but we'll get into about why the country was divided and they couldn't get across the Great Salt Lake. They couldn't get to California until the 1830s and 40s. So go ahead to the next page. And here's images they're bringing back about the Queen. And just I found so much information. Keep going. And more, there's a Mexican statue of Queen Califia, and they're actually taking down the Christopher Columbus statues and putting up statues of Queen Califia. This is down in Baja, Califia Hotel. Keep going. Giants, we won't get into this, but there were giants all over. And this was the Nephilim that goes into the biblical prophecies about the giants of men and the daughters of humans interacting, and all these sites there. So the queen was an Amazonian. So there's further leaves credence that she was a tall Nubian naked woman that was ruling with her griffins.
Well, I was going to ask you, Mr. Lee, was the people that Queen Califia, as an Amazonian, that she was ruling over, were they giants themselves, or were they what we know conventionally as, you know, your average Homo sapiens of the 21st century? Were they like big?
Well,
like this?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if her fellow queens. I mean, there were several queens. It wasn't just Queen Califia. They were ruled by queens. It was the feminine divine. It was nurture nature. It was like nature is part of us. We would never take from nature, and that's why everything was left alone. For thousands and thousands of years, Doctor, they did not leave their lands. They did not leave more than, they had everything they needed. Every plant had a name. Every rock had a name. They were living in bliss and harmony and with nature. No waste. What do we do today? You know, there's a reason why things are being reset today, because we're the most wasteful world, especially in the United States, of anybody in the world. And Mother Gaia is not going to allow this anymore. But back to your giant story, back in South America, there's a place called Iligante. And as you keep scrolling through the book, I'm going to show you there's an island called Iligante in the California island as well. So the answer to your question was yes. I just don't know the time frame. And we do see women. We do see men that are giants. So I would assume, here this map, go back one. See that map right there? You can see the giants. You can see there were sea creatures. There were unicorns. There were flying turtles. This is a map from, so here, we'll get into it, but Stanford Library has 800 maps of California being an island in the Stanford Research Library. Oh, and then they said it's fraud. They're making it all up. 800 maps, and you'll see these details. So go ahead, keep going. So that's the giants as well. And then these griffins is what Queen Califia ruled with, was these griffins. And these griffins are all modeled after the Sphinx is a griffin as well. So it goes back to the astrology of the Sphinx, the lion, the bull, and the man. And those are the four symbols. But it was a feminine. And they took off her wings, they clipped them. But you can see through history and modeling, the queen griffins, they were a part of culture, and they're the Tartarians' emblems.
Okay, let me do a mental bookmark here. We're getting some feedback. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, your speaker's up too loud. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's perfect. Before you finish today, you've already alluded to it twice, and I did want to address that. This you mentioned Mother Gaia, and I wanted to talk about the sacred feminine, especially since you led off with the astrological conjuncture that's going on here. It's my contention that the sacred feminine element is what's going to be instrumental in helping us get out of the current situation here. That's why you have bumbling guys like Joe Biden hogging the, sucking all the oxygen out of the atmosphere. So if you can just kind of keep in the back of your mind, if you could address that, especially since you're talking today about Queen Califia, not King Califia.
I get into that. I label out the whole what it was like in the world, and I rename the tribes and bring back the life of the tribes. because General Vallejo came, and the first act he did as senator in 1850 in California when they started statehood was to name 27 counties in California and totally wipe out the 80 tribes that were existed and totally wiped out their legend and their lore in 1850. That's what the gold rush was really about. I get into the California. So go ahead and go back to the book and we'll scroll down. But I do cover how fecundant, how beautiful, how long lasting. And
also, a question that raises here is that are these chimeric or chimeric creatures, these hybrids possibly?
I want to say what I really want to get into it. I don't know if you can do a search, but I'm going to do a spoiler alert if I break it right now because it's raw.
Okay. If you can come back to it later, that's fine.
Now let's go to it now. Let me find out here on my page where it is.
All right.
Because it's really fun. It's really fun to go through. In fact, go to page. I got it right here. Go to page. Oh, come on. See if you can look up Wizard of Oz chapter.
In this current book of yours?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see.
I got
Zardoz. Okay. Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum.
This is going to blow everybody away.
You have 4 separate references. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see it in the chapter 1. It says the many allegories of Wizard of Oz, the griffin symbol. Of
page 37.
37. Well, I don't think you'll be able to see on the screen, or can you?
Go ahead. Can you go to page 37?
Let me see here.
Oh, we're at 41 here.
37. Oh, yeah. Okay. I have it. It says the many at the bottom of the page 37, ladies and gentlemen. It says the many allegories of the Wizard of Oz. Do you want me to read it, or do you have it there?
I'm seeing a page 41 still on my screen.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking at your book, the PDF. Page 37, or do you want 41?
I'll go back to 37 if you can, see if it's there.
I have 37. It says most are aware the first ever color movie was made public was The Wizard of Oz. Is that it?
Yeah, but on your screen of showing the book to the people.
Oh, okay. On this one. No, I don't have that there. I didn't load that one up.
Okay, gotcha.
I didn't load any text, just images.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
All right, so let me just read this because this is kind of very interesting.
Yeah,
so
please
this
do.
So most are aware the first ever color movie was The Wizard of Oz. The Yellow Brick Road was paved in gold. The U.S. legal currency was then based in gold. It was originally in silver, and they changed their shoes to red. So such a movie was an allegory of the state of affairs we live in today. The New World Order was instituted in America via the stock market crash 1929 and the bankruptcy of the United States in 1933, when they tied us to the birth certificate for debt to the banksters as collateral against human capital, against collateral against the debt from World War II. So United States government employee, the Internal Revenue Code, IRC, and all state tax codes are in harmony with the above definition of an individual. A corporation of a one is an artificial person constructed by law. So who is that represented in the movie? The straw man represented the legal straw man filled with hay and no standing. In the 1930s, the all capital letter written name straw man, the newly created artificial person that has no brain and speaks and acts for its once upon a time sovereign you and me, was created while Americans were confused and distracted by the commotion caused by the introduction of the New World Order. The scarecrow identified the straw man persona for Dorothy thusly, quote, "Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking. Of course, I'm not bright about those things." The setting of this allegory is in Kansas, the heartland of America, the geographical center of the USA. So in comes the twister and the Great Depression, the stock market crash, the U.S. bankruptcy, and the theft of gold. Remember when FDR recalled all the gold? And then somewhere over the rainbow, the solid ground of Kansas. When they landed in Oz, O-Z means gold, Dorothy commented, "Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore." Exactly, because after the bankruptcy of the United States, Kansas was no longer Kansas anymore. It was a 2 capital letter federal postal designation that is part of the federal zone designated by the zone improvement. I bet nobody knows what zone improvement's initials are. Zip code, established by the bankrupt United States in 1933. And Dorothy says, we're now in this state. This state are deceptively defined as tax jurisdiction purposes as the District of Columbia. No one can say what other districts are in the District of Columbia that I've ever met. All right, so the Tin Man. Tin Man stands for Tax Identification Number, TIN, and is a hollow man, a tin, a vessel, a vehicle, newly created code words for our straw man. Just as the straw man has no brain, the Tin Man vessel vehicle has no heart. Both are artificial persons. Tin Man represents the mechanical and heartless aspect of commerce and commercial law. Nothing personal, it's just business. And the lion represents at one time the fearless American people, but having lost their courage. And then all scampered down the Emerald City, the city of the green non-Federal Reserve notes, the new fiat money decree we hear in the Munchkins singing the glories of the wizard creation. You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark, you're out of the night. Because this is all the Luciferian symbolism regarding. The ancient symbol of the Knights Templar Freemasonry are giving to practicing witchcraft and credited the originators of modern banking circa 1099. I'll skip down a little bit. So it gets into the Crown Corp and the Crown Corp being the real bankies, but here's where it gets fun. So you remember the flying monkeys, Daryl, in the movie The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, absolutely. Who are the flying monkeys of the present?
Well, they were the griffins to Queen Califia, and Queen Califia is the Wicked Witch of the West.
Oh, there.
So there they show us right there that the Wicked Witch of the West was I know, they're telling you all the stuff back in 33. Frank Baum wrote the book in, I think, 1894 or something like that, and they made the first color movie, The Wizard of Oz. They put us on our strawmans. They put us out to sea under Admiralty law. So that's when all this began, you know, the whole hiding of it all. And then, you know, so, yeah, it's really, it is fascinating that this whole allegory has been played out. And the controllers that are controlling us, they do things over decades. And they got all the movies that give all the pre-programming like 9/11, you know, the towers coming down with Bruce Willis and all the different things. They tell us what they're going to do, and they say, go ahead and try and stop us. So Queen Califia ruled with the flying griffins, and the flying griffins were trained to eat male flesh because they knew the white man was trying to conquer the lands. But the reason they couldn't get on, if you want to scroll down there, we got some images here of the mythology. Yeah, so there's Queen Califia and Wonder Woman. And then we got Queen Califia being portrayed by Whoopi Goldberg in Disneyland. They had a whole thing about Disneyland and Queen Califia. And
Which
then
movie was that with Whoopi Goldberg?
It was called Yesterland, and they had in Disneyland, Yesterland, and they would go in. And then last year, I just found out in my hometown Sausalito that they had a Queen Califia reunion, and they're bringing Queen Califia back, and they're putting up all this imagery and all this pageantry to bring Califia back to us. It's all part of them, you know, the whole thing about the post-genderism and, you know, Black Lives Matter and everything. This is all about, you know, but Queen Califia, this story.
Child sacrifice, perhaps, pedophilia?
Oh, yeah.
Were they involved with this, the Califians?
No, it wasn't about sacrifice. I mean, they say there were sacrifices, but when people talk about sacrifices, they don't understand what they're really saying. You know, back in the old times, there was a much more spiritual element to giving up your body for the soul, or giving up for the greater good, or sacrificing for the greater good. I mean, that's
what about child sacrifice? Because, you know, it's recently been revealed, and we already knew this for years and years, that Disneyland is just none other than a ritualistic conurbation of a pedophilic network that sucks child energy.
And Walt Disney was an order of Malay, and Walt Disney, and it's all perverted. It's all got subliminal sex messages. I mean, you may remember, you may be old enough, I don't know, but remember when we had ABC, CBS, and TV, CBS and ABC, CBS, and NBC, and those were the only three channels you got, except the local channel on TV. And at midnight they signed off. And if you go into vigilantcitizen.com and you look up American Broadcast 1960, they have subliminal messages saying, trust your government, obey, subliminally messaging every 200th frame in the background that is pulsing into your brain in the 1960s. What do you think they're doing to our children and us now with the subliminal messaging? It's beyond the pale, the advanced technology. And I used to work on Wall Street, you know, with the vaccines and the biotechnology in the 90s, and they said they were going to control everybody back then. That's why I got out of Wall Street, because they had the technology back then. They're just waiting for the time to bring it out and to literally execute it.
Well, this movie, Yesterland, as you know, the original Disneyland down in Anaheim, where I grew up, has all the different themes in the theme park. They always have a land suffix. They've got Tomorrowland, Frontierland, and Fantasyland. It's interesting that in the movie it's called Yesterland, which isn't part of the original Disney grid. So what's the significance of that? Are they taking us back to like the prefab history, the Califia history? Is that what the idea is with the movie Yesterland?
I don't know why they're doing it. They're watching everything we're doing, and again, they want to create division by conquer by division. So maybe they're allowing truths to get out, like the Tartarians, like flat Earth, all these different things. Well, they're just saying, we don't care. We're just going to divide you. But you're saying, okay, I'm speaking the truth. And then if you watch that movie, Final Cut, or The History of You is another one, they can control your memory. They can change your memory. So they're going to be changing people's memories, and they're going to think something, and you're going to say, wait a minute. It's just like, here's another example, Daryl. In my book I wrote on flat Earth, I had the Mandela effect. I had an image of Kennedy. How many were in Kennedy? How many were in the car when Kennedy got assassinated, Daryl?
I think there were 5, including the driver.
Well, 4 is what I know. And I had a picture that the Vatican had painted of Kennedy slumped over in the Lincoln Continental, which I remember that suicide doors. I used to drive in a Continental Lincoln. My buddy had one all the time. And there were 4 doors that opened up. And there was Kennedy, his wife, there was a Secret Service agent, and there was Connolly in the passenger seat.
And so Connolly's wife was there too, wasn't she?
No, she wasn't originally in the car.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I went to Daily Plaza. I did a whole thing in Texas of the occult symbolism behind it. I interviewed guys that do docents that teach you in. There's always 4 in the car. Well, the Mandela effect comes about 3-4 years ago, and this is all based on CERN, and they just ramped up CERN again. They now have 6 people in the car, and in the suicide doors, there's these windows that come up. And you can still find old pictures with 4 in the car. And Lee Iacocca, 33-degree Freemason, is the one who picked up the Lincoln Continental and took it back to Chrysler. So now all of them have Connolly's wife in the car and another Secret Service agent. So they've been able to manipulate it. So I go, wait a minute, I got it in my book. I'm going to show you there's only 4. I open my book. There's 6 in the car. They've changed my book. This is the technology that exists today. And this is a part of what
they changed it. Was that an ebook or the physical book?
Physical book. I've got 20 copies.
So how does that, you mean in the
one
printing
of 2
of
things.
it? In the
It's
printing?
one of 2 things. It's one of 2 things. Either they change the book or they change my memory. Either way, I don't know which one. So this is what we're dealing with, is total sophistication. We've had free energy for 100 years, gas-powered cars. It's ridiculous what they're not showing us. And nobody knows how waveless wireless works either. How do we get a download? How do it's going 60 miles an hour and 60 miles an hour we connect on cell phone? How does that work? No one knows. And this is subtle vibrational frequency. So just I'm saying is just be cautious of everything you see and read, and take for granted everything I'm saying, but verify for yourself. And now we're seeing these fact checkers are now the liars are called fact checkers. It's really absurd how they've turned everything on its head, and people believe that. And now you do Google searches, and a lot of documents that I had before, I'm doing research for my next book. The documents aren't there anymore, or they've been changed.
Well, Zaga Nasha is making a comment in the live stream saying that flat Earth, that's where it always loses me. And I was just thinking about it today, maybe the term flat Earth needs to be abandoned because it's so loaded by now, right?
Everything is geoengineering. We went through the geoengineering thing, and it started off with chemtrails, and then they had to change it to geoengineering. Got to be a big deal about how you name it and stuff. The thing about the flat Earth, it's so simple. Thank you, Melanie. She's on. Is that it's very simple to prove if you have an open mind, and if you've been trained to think a certain way. How can the moon be 4 times smaller than the Earth in a gray dusty substance? Yet the gray dusty substance can illuminate and light the Earth up, so you can read a book at night on a full moon. Yet the 4 times bigger blue, bright, reflective ball doesn't shine on the moon. And then the other one, just really simple. You got around the equator 24 hours in a day, it's traveling at 1,000 miles an hour. They use the law of ridiculous numbers because we can't understand over 100 miles an hour. Okay? Over 100 miles an hour, we can't experience it. So they can make up any number they want, and you can't understand what they're talking about. So we're traveling and spinning at 1,000 miles an hour every day, coming back to the equator of the point we started to create our day. Yet all of the lines of the time frames converge at the North Pole at the same point. So what time is it at the North Pole? Hello? Only way it works is like this. And then you can get into flights, you get everything. So I have my free book on PDF at plaintruth.info. I've got all my books. Educate yourself. But first you have to erase what you think you were taught, what you think you know. And why do they call it sea level? Plate tectonics, aeroplane, the plane never adjusts for the curve. I could go for the days on this stuff. But once I got into it and tried to prove it wrong is when I found out the story. And the last thing on the flat earth, and I'll leave it from here. Every culture before the Roman Catholic said we were geocentric and all the heavens were placed above it to raise our self-consciousness awareness. That's why the church won't allow you to think about reincarnation. It's all it's all ridiculous when you get into it. So the Flat Earth book is out there. It's like a people's magazine, but all the ancients, I'm on the side of all the ancients who built these pyramids we can't figure out that are all around the world. We still can't figure out these massive stones cut like corn, all these perfect shapes. We don't understand. They're all set up to the stars in the heavens. Again, we're just coming out of the Iron Age. We're just coming out of the Dark Ages. We're just starting to look up and ask questions rather than obey and not think. You're not allowed to ask questions in school. You're not allowed to, I grew up in the bumper sticker my friends had in their car called Question Authority. Remember that?
Yes.
Remember the bumper sticker, you old timers like me? Question Authority. And we just don't do that. So we can get it.
As an aside, this concept and the word Google connotes this unfathomable number that's so mind-boggling you can't even wrap your head around it. So that there was an early taunt saying this is we're going to just Google it, right? And that comes from an old comic strip when there were newspapers, Barney Google, and they adopted it. These Silicon Valley people who didn't even grow up in the U.S., Sergey Brin, whoever else. So you're going to know it's a Pentagon deal, the whole Google concept, which is very much consistent with what you're talking about, the Mandela effect, these huge numbers, right? The distance from Earth to Moon and other planetary bodies, which comes out of the popular, comes out, it's just like the Wizard of Oz, comes out of the comic strips. That sort of...
And just a sidebar, and we only got 19 minutes, so we should go back to the book.
We got 19. Let's get back on track here.
Just to finish on the goo gel. So goo gel. So goo gel is the black entity, the dark entity that Harold Kautz Vela talks about a lot and talks about the black goo. And that's where the name Google, there's always different names but that's where the Google comes from, because this black goo is used in the D-Wave computers. And that black goo, it's a dark entity, it's a negative energy. And that allows these D-Wave computers to process the algorithms at such massive, massive information processing that allows them to control us all through their 5G and all the rest of the controlling mechanisms. So just a sidebar there.
All right. Now, is that Google? Is the goo? Is that an electronic circuit, microcircuit?
I don't know.
Colloidal form, rather colloidal.
Yeah, but if you get into the whole, I did a whole thing on the founding of Google, and it's by the dark side and DARPA. I mean, you look at Tim Schmidt and everything. Where does he works for the CIA? It's just another entity. Zuckerberg. They're all they're just face people. They're just face people. So you have someone to talk about, but behind the scenes, there's real intention. So let's finish with the book here. So just start scrolling down, and I'll just give it a briefing. Okay. That's a black statue of the Statue of Liberty there. That was turned to white. Keep going. This is Queen Califia. This is huge. This is in the Mark Hopkins Hotel. It's not 7 feet tall panels. There's 15 of them.
That's San Francisco, right? San Francisco.
Yeah. And the talk of the Mark Hopkins, big, huge, massive hotel. Keep going if you have another screen up there. But I show the 8 panels, and you can see them up there of the whole story of the Roman Catholics coming over and the Spaniards coming over and talking to the queens and taking over their lands.
Is this the ballroom?
Yeah, that's that's a banquet room, they call it.
Oh, the banquet room. Okay.
Yeah. And you keep scrolling down, you can see here's Columbus coming in and talking to the queens. Why would they have all these paintings of the Queen Califia from a book?
Intel on the murals that Diego Rivera and some of the muralistas of Mexico, the Azteca land, came up to San Francisco and started putting these this type of frescoes up there. Any intel on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go to Coit Tower and you look at Rivera's work there, it talks about the whole working project at WPG, and they just redid it all. It's fascinating. But it's all the laborers of California. It's all about that and stuff. But this, to me, finding this here was just like, why would they put it in the most prominent hotel at the top of San Francisco? And if you keep going down, I don't know if you saved it or not, but I show the Mark Hopkins Hotel. But, here's the black women. I mean, here's the women that were running the country and ruling over. And you see in the background all the birds and fecundity that were flying in harmony and peace. Keep scrolling down because let me see what images you got because I want to get into.
Very quickly, Diego Rivera's wife, Frida Kahlo, who made a big splash a number of years ago with a biopic, right? She comes from Germany, 1848, part of the German emigrant deal. Did she bring the occultic tradition to Mexico and combine it with the indigenous? Because she dressed like an indigenous woman, even though she was European. I think she was a brujera, a witch.
It could be. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. So this is something that's just, why do they have this in the hotel? Why are they making it so significant? These paintings were commissioned back in the 1920s by a very famous artist. I forget his name. Go ahead and keep going down.
What's the significance of the padre with the crucifix?
Well, it's convert or die. And I covered that in my book. I covered that in the California book. They came over here and said, you're converting to the missions. And if you don't convert to them, because think about that, the 20 original missions in California that were built along the coastline only. And who did they build them? So they only had, they come over in these ships. It takes 6 to 9 months to sail over. They come in these galleon ships, and now they're going to build these missions. Well, then they got to have adobe. They got to have wood. They got these beautiful altars that were sent over from Spain. You get into how the missions were. They never say how it was built.
Well, very quickly, for people who didn't grow up in California, what is the mission system you're referring to?
This is the California mission system that were set up by the Jesuits when they landed. And then you have the friars and what was the other ones they call them? Dominicans. And Juniper Cerro comes in and they got that big statue on 101, you see, with them pointing across to the lands. So that was all part of the conquest because they were the Catholics were sponsored by Queen Isabella to come to conquer the lands. And when they found all the gold and they found all the natives and they found all the fecundity, they just raped it, and they just conquered it. And then they papered over the history of all these people, but they kept it in memory in these paintings and stuff. And this is them bringing the cross. And so all of them were brought into the missions, and I cover it, Mission Santa Fe and these other missions, and they were converted and they were baptized, and then they were buried without markers. And there was and the fight for California was only 2 people were killed. And that was in Novato, Olimpali Park. 2 brownskins were killed. And that was the entire Mexican-American War of people that were killed in 1846 to 1848. 2 people. They just came in and took the lands. You know why? Because these people were not violent. They never protected against war because the island, if we can keep scrolling down to get into the island part of it, the island, that's Whoopi Goldberg there in the picture. And then also the California seal is Queen Califia. They've changed it to Minerva, but originally it was Queen Califia. Keep going. I think I have a picture.
Wow. What's the vintage of this original Queen Califia seal?
That's not the original. Keep going. The next, I think it's in here's the Queen Califia. This was in the Sausalito. They did this huge pageantry celebrating her. And this was sponsored by the same people that did the Disney movie and whatnot.
Oh, I see. So they made it out to be a movie promotion, but it's something. This is all I have right here, the graphics. So,
all right.
Anyway,
So
that gives us a pretty good visual representation of what you've written about extensively. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. So how did California become an island? And I can show you all the maps and stuff of, you can look at my book of all these maps and stuff. Incredible details. They had St. Rafael. They had San Diego. And if you look on Google Maps and you look at the California coastline, there's a gentleman named David Mix something who brought these maps in, and he was an engineer, and he took all the maps around, and he found that California was an island up to 200 miles out and about 100 feet down. And the coastline went all the way out. And that's why we have pygmy forests on the coast. Well, it drops off to a continental shelf that goes down to almost 600 feet right there, all along the California coast. So that makes total sense that when they came around to the west, they could not get inland to the lands because they had these huge mountains to cover. And then coming from the east, they had the Great Salt Lake they couldn't get across. That's why when Lewis and Clark Freemasons came in 1817 up in the Oregon Territory and had to come down to California, or the Mormon battalions or the 150 battalions that were hired by General Fremont to come in to take out the brownskins had to come from the south. They could not come directly from east to west until 1846. Why could they not come from Salt Lake City, Brigham Young Freemason, all of them Freemasons? Why could they not come across the Great Salt Lake? because it was still a salt lake up until the Great Flood of 1810, which very few natives, they refer to it. It's very hard to find the documentation, but even in Wikipedia, they refer to the Great Flood of 1810. So this goes along with cataclysmic events of the Great Reset that I chronicle in my book of the 1812 Great Reset of the Mississippi River flowed backwards with 6,000 earthquakes, where it rang bells in Philadelphia and New York. It was so strong. That's when the continental divide ended. It goes back to the Tambora volcano, 5 times greater than Krakatoa. Never heard about Tambora in Indonesia. That caused the winter without a summer in 1816, where people in New York City had an average temperature in the summer of 26 degrees, and people starved to death. And there was Napoleon's comet that came out the exact same time in 1813. So here we have these geoengineering events that reset the whole world, and that dovetails with the mud floods of the Tartarians.
Okay, Mr. Lee, geoengineering. Someone mentioned in the comment here, 495.3. If you could turn your speaker down, your monitor down, we're getting some echo. Someone mentioned here in the comment, lithium salt. So do you think maybe the formation of the Great Lake as we know it today, right, the salt flats, was a geoengineering project using the crystal properties of the lithium salts? Is that a possibility?
Well, it's a possibility, but I'm more about how the island got formed and whether or not this event that they said happened millenniums ago, millions of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, really happened just 200 years ago. And all the evidence points to yes. With one simple thought process: why could they not take their wagon trains across the plains? And then we have the Salton Sea, which is right down off of Los Angeles. So it perfectly makes sense. And I get into the whole seismic Andreas fault and the plates, that there was this huge shift that went on, and then everything drained from Wyoming, where the big lakes used to be and the big glaciers, drained all the way out into the Pacific Ocean. And that's when the island no longer was, and that's why they could get across the Sierras and they could start mining the gold directly and built the trains, because they couldn't get across the Great Salt Lake until then. So I've never thought about the Great Salt Lake being lithium, but I do know they sprayed lithium over people to calm them down.
Yeah, exactly. Which Californians are known for being mellowed out, right? But my larger point was that possible what you have described and documented in your previous books is that this was the product of a colossal geoengineering project.
Yes, that I can talk on. Yeah, so all those things I named about the Great Reset, we're in the next Great Reset, and someone asked, do you think it's going to become an island again? California is their baby. This is the greatest resource capital in the world, and they didn't get to it till the 1850s. That's when all the trains exported all these 300-foot tall sequoias, and they put them in the exhibitions in Paris. They put them in Washington, D.C. They put them in the Chicago Fair in 1893 because they'd never seen anything like it before. It was all new to them. And now, within a year, you're going to hear about the 8 great dams they're going to be building in California, because they have great dams in the California basin. They funded it November 2014, $500 billion to build 8 great mega dams, because now they're geoengineering the weather now. December, we got record rains and then super drought. And I guarantee you there's going to be an atmospheric river coming up. And then they're going to say, well, since the Sierras provide water for 40% of the snowpack is water for California, we should get dams, because now the temperature rising is going to need for dams so we can get our water, and everybody's going to go, yay. So it's all part of the plan. And then getting back to the flood events you're talking about, the geoengineering, in 1862, they had what's called the arc storm. Sacramento was underwater, 10 feet of water for the entire year, and Governor Leavenworth Stanford had to govern from San Francisco because the water came in 14 days, 72 inches, 10 feet of water. 72 inches, 72 inches of water in 10 days. And this was, there's other earthquakes that occurred right around that time as well. So all of these events, the mud flood events and everything we're seeing, yes, they had the geoengineering back then. They just took technology and the benevolence and turned it into the stuff we're seeing today. The L world, the male world, the technology.
Okay. Well, you bring the male technology element. Let's circle back as we wind down here. We got about 5 minutes left. Circle back then around the sacred feminine. It sounds like Queen Califia was a pretty bad piece of work. Is there someone like her that can displace her? I'm thinking of perhaps like the First Lady Melania Trump, That's who I was betting on, not Donald Trump. I said Melania Trump. There is our rescue package right there. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Lee?
Well, if you want to look at the pictures of her when she was a lesbian and posed for nude pictures, then we can talk about that.
Okay.
I mean, when you talk about politics, you lose me, because you think someone thinks someone else is going to fix it. This whole charade about a govern means mind and ment means mental, is to rule your frickin' mind. And all it does is let us not have to do anything. Oh, sit in your desk and we'll vote every 4 years, and we'll go in and we'll do this, and we'll go back and sit and see if it works. Oh, Obama's going to save us all. He's going to get community building. They're all a bunch of sexual perverts. Trump paid $11 million in sexual to women that he raped. He was on Epstein Island. Clinton was on Epstein Island. They're all a bunch of perverts, and they're pedophiles. Pizzagate, Hillary Clinton and Pizzagate and Podesto. It doesn't matter what, Trump's going to be the 47th president, so you know. And, Trump is the end game. That's what the Gabriel trumpets are, 17.4. What do you play in bridge? It's the trump card, the end of the game. They're telling you it's done. Trump declared bankruptcy 8 different times. I mean, and his father was with Nikola Tesla. He had his uncle had all Tesla papers. So Melania is his third wife. Okay, whatever. She's pretty. She's, but who is she? Well, get back and look at where she was before, and she was posing in New York Post has a big picture of her kissing 3 girls and stuff. So they're going to bring the feminine divine back, and that's circling back. And I know we got a few minutes left. But that is the whore that rides the beast in Genesis 17:4. And this is all
the whore of Babylon?
This is the whore of Babylon. It's Kamala Harris.
Okay.
And Kamala Harris,
California, by the way, represents
from rare California. But her mom, who she's not black, she's not brown. She was born in India. Her husband is a big, huge drug attorney, a big pharma drug attorney. But her mom worked at McGill University, the torture specialist university in Montreal, Quebec. And then after that, her mom worked at Livermore Labs next to you in Berkeley. So, I mean, we're seeing this whole setup of the whore that rides the beast. It was supposed to be Hillary, but she got all sick. So they pushed it out a little bit, as my understanding goes. But the rise of the feminine divine has to happen, because the feminine women need to come back and take their rightful place. And so
that's what I'm leading to. We have to go through the host first, though, right?
Well, we have to understand where we have to say what we want. We're so busy saying what we don't want, but we're not saying what we want. And so I'm a big proponent of bringing the feminine divine back, empowering women. You get to the Freedom to Fascism, Aaron Russo interview, where he says that Rockefellers put women in the workplace to get them in pantsuits for the double income and to get them away from their children, and also to get them away from their feminine nurture nature. It's all by design. And that was done in the 70s, guys and ladies. And here's the other thing about the feminine divine. We got to change our words. Try not using the man and say, describe a girl and don't use the word man. Go ahead. Female, woman, manual, menstrual, and harm, it's all men. Every word is his story. Everything per son. There's no female. You can't, girl and lady and feminine divine are the only terms that describe the true nature of magical, magnanimous, magnificent, Magdalena, magnetism, the law of attraction, which I've gotten into with healing people with magnets.
Well, and so this is all throwing out here. I think the sacred feminine is coming in the form of a Magdalenian figure. Yes. Was she not also a prostitute? But she was also the most devoted to Jesus of Nazareth.
She was a lesbian.
She was.
Yes.
To who? Yeah, I mean,
according to Serpent of the Gods by Jeremy Norby, who lived with the Amazon and did all the ayahuasca stuff, and he got into the whole DNA. The beginning of our DNA.
It sounds like you got heavily into the ayahuasca as well.
Well, I learned about magnetism. No, I never did that, but that's an animal magic. But I learned about the DNA creation, and the DNA creation, or beginnings of the DNA, AGCT. We have 2 females hooking up. That's how DNA starts. 2 females, law of attraction, get together. Males are pushing, females are attracting. Males of wisdom.
That's not lesbianism. That's what you're talking about.
But I'm saying
you're talking about metaphysical concept.
But the beginning of the DNA is two females, and then they create the males, and then they create the replication, which is called our RNA, our operating systems, on the backside. So that's where you get the AGTA of our DNA. but it starts with two females. So in order to create life, and you get into the scriptures and all this, it's all about the feminine divine doing the creation. Men can't create life. We can't. We're the seeds. The women are the hosts. And so we have to get back to honoring the women, and we have to empower women to get back to their feminine divine. We got to get them to start dyeing their hair because they're dying, because they're putting all these chemicals and carcinogens in their hair, and they're dyeing themselves, and they're making themselves up. Why are they making themselves up? To look prettier. It's all about they don't love themselves because we're not allowing them to by all our language and all the rest of the things we're doing. So.
Well, I think that brings us full circle from the wicked Queen Califia to ending on a note of optimism here, which we need, because as you say, we're always, and this is intentional, we're always doing the negatives expose, right? Oh, this is run by so and so and so and so, but we don't articulate where we're going and what we want and what we desire, and we need to start vocalizing that
and doing your own. We can't elect someone we're never going to meet. We only see, I always ask people if they talk about politics, you ever met them? Well, no. What are you talking about? We see it on a screen. Yeah. We never meet anybody. And if you go to, remember protest zones that used to have them 2 miles away? If a president came, you had to sit 2 miles away with your signs now. I mean, it's all theater. It's the theater of the absurd. And so to put our power into something we see on a screen, no, it's meet and greet. It's community. Save your seed. Grow your own. Find your community. Find your tribe. And protect your blood. This is critical now that everybody protects their blood that haven't been vaccinated, because bloodlines are being usurped with these vaccinations. They're changing the X chromosome. No more females will be born in 3 generations. That's their
mRNA.
There you go.
Robert A. Malone of UC Davis. To bring another circle.
And the hydro vulgaris, which we talked about before, what's in there, and they're developing at Davis, and they even got the tarot cards with them on there as well. So yeah,
there you go.
I didn't want to end on that note, but
no. But let's end on a positive note. How do we get your books again? Do you have the hard copy still, or is it all just PDFs?
Yeah, if you can put in there, what I'd like to do is mail them to people, because I can give them to you less expensive than on Amazon, and I'd like not to support it. But if you go on Amazon under James W. Lee, you're going to see all my books listed. If you go onto a plain, PLANE, a plaintruth.info, and at the header, you're going to see my free 9 books PDF. So read the book, see if you want to order them. And if you want to order them, my email is jwlpeace, like the peace sign, PEACE, at gmail.com. And I'll give you a discounted price, and I'll mail them out to you. But I have 9 books, Biomag Healing, Flat Earth, Geoengineering, Marin County, California Story, Queen Califia. And then in my next book, I'm just finishing up now, and I wish I could have showed you, was Everything is a Lie, Nothing is True, 21 Things You Know Nothing About.
All right. Now, I'll put the JWL link down here when it loads up, so people can contact you directly and get that discount. Yes. Mr. Lee, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Godspeed. Thank you very much for your work. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. And come visit, will you?
I will. Very soon.
All the food's growing, and we're going to have fecundity, so it'll be fun.
Good.
Take care.
I'll bake a cake and bring it by.
Thanks,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you all.
Love you all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.